Welcome to another week of Light to My Path, our 2025 Bible reading plan. This week we are reading another week from the Gospel of Luke and then a psalm on Saturday. This is a fantastic week of reading from the Gospel of Luke. It's as Jesus ends his journey to Jerusalem and things start to get a little heightened and his language starts to get heightened. Things start to get real emotional because he's got this mission to accomplish to get to Jerusalem and then to do there what he came to do, which ultimately is to die for the sins of Israel and for the sins of the world. I want to focus in on Luke 19. I think it's a really especially important chapter. I could say that about all of the chapters though, but this is the one where things start to get really emotional. Things start to get really heavy. He starts to really speak against Israel and the leadership of Israel and the temple and Jerusalem because they have missed the point. This is what the parable of the pounds is about. God has invested so much of himself into these people. He's given them scriptures, he's given them the law, he's given them knowledge of him. They're the ones that are to represent. And rather than investing that, the people held it for themselves. Rather than investing it in order to bear more fruit and to grow and to spread the knowledge of God, they kind of held on to it themselves, and that's where Jesus really starts to get frustrated. He gets to Jerusalem, he goes to Jerusalem, up to Jerusalem in verse 28, and this is where he has his entry into Jerusalem. We celebrate this at Palm Sunday, and they're hailing him as a king, but it's so interesting when he actually gets there, through the hailing as a king, he's weeping, and he's weeping over the city of Jerusalem. He says, If you had recognized on this day the things that make for peace, but now they're hidden from your eyes, you just can't see them. Indeed, the days will come when your enemies will set up ramparts around you and surround you and hem you in on every side. They will crush you to the ground, you and your children within you, and they will leave not one stone unturned. And you know what he's talking about here? He's talking about the destruction of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, it's the city of God. It's God's city, and God's own people have rejected the Messiah. They've rejected the warning, and there is judgment coming upon Jerusalem. And it's not like God throwing lightning bolts at them. It will come through the destruction of Jerusalem, seen about 30 or so years later, when Rome comes in and finally destroys Jerusalem. And it's an act of judgment that Jesus foresaw happening because they didn't recognize the time of the Messiah coming. I mean, actually what Jesus says is, because you did not recognize the time of your visitation from God. And this is one of the moments where we see Jesus come as close as possible to saying, I am God, without actually saying it, but he kind of does say it. He said, I am here visiting, I am the Messiah, I have come, and you did not recognize your visitation from God. God is there. And then he goes to the temple and he does that symbolic cleansing of the temple, right? And so Jesus is emotional because his own people have missed God. And then he gets to Jerusalem and there's some more confrontation, and then eventually next week we'll read about how he's crucified, right? Because of the marriage of his own people rejecting him and then the Roman rejecting him. For us, there's so much to say about this. I mean, the biggest thing that I take away from this, I hope you can take away from it too, is God has given himself to you. God has invested in you with knowledge of him, with his word, with the blessing of knowing God. Will we squander it? Will we keep that for ourselves? Or will we share it with the world around? When God is acting, when God is moving, to use Jesus' language, when God is visiting us, are we going to recognize it? Are we going to see it for what it is? Or are we going to have our eyes closed to it? I know for me and for us as a church, I want to do everything we can to invest knowledge of God in a way that bears fruit, that bears more knowledge of God, that more and more people can come to see him, can come to know him. That's just one of the many things we are going to read about and see this week as we read the Gospel of Luke. Have a great week of reading.